working with important issues. The people that you're going to hear from today have stories that you need to hear. The NAACP was formed in 1909, 109 years ago, and has been a freedom fighter for justice and inclusion for African Americans all across the United States of America. 5 years later, in 1914, the NAACP Portland, Oregon branch was formed. The Portland NAACP branch of the NAACP has been a voice of reckoning for the putrid, violent, blatant, and unapologetic actions of a racist society that imagined a totally white community, a community that severely whipped blacks that refused to leave by not less than 20 or more than 39 stripes to be repeated every 6 months until they were no more. It went further. In its relentless tirade of racism and classism, by ensuring that no blacks would never become stakeholders by writing in its Constitution that no free Negro or mulatto not residing in this state at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall ever come, reside, or be within this state, or hold any real estate, or make any contract. Well, in 1859, it was a done deal. Oregon entered the Union of the United States and did so as a white-only state. With well over 77% of Oregon's population being white, I think it's pretty safe to say that Oregon is the whitest state in the Union and is one of the whitest cities in America. Oregon has continued to hold true to its promise of exclusion of African Americans from being property owners and cardholders in the game. It is no secret that something went terribly wrong in the largely populated area of Vanport, Oregon, now called Delta Park, when flooded waters displaced an entire community. On the morning of Memorial Day, May 30th, 1948, the Housing Authority of Portland issued the following statement: "Remember, dikes are safe at present. You will be warned if necessary. You will have time to leave. Don't get excited." This non-exciting catastrophe drove the African American community to northeast Portland, only later to become subjected to blighting. Blighted areas means that by reason of deterioration, faulty planning, inadequate or improper facility, deteriorous land use of the existence of unsafe structures or any combination of these three, or detrimental to the safety, health, or welfare of the community. This opened this community up to predatory lending principles that would cause them, or they thought, to protect their homes from the sensation of blighting and from being devalued. Well, that didn't work. It didn't work at all. We were blighted, and there was later 40 acres that were taken away from the African American community. Again, we were told not to worry, and that everything would be well, only to find the African American community once again displaced. Now we're going to fast forward to 2019. There is a threat to the finalization of gentrification and displacement of the African American community once again. When we look at what is happening in our city with the issues that surround us concerning this lien that will be placed on our properties, we are finding it very despairing. The NAACP was successful in 1922 to help facilitate the removal of this wasteful and shameful stain that encroaches our society even now. We stand now, and we didn't come alone. We came to stand in solidarity with our neighbors that make the Portland the Portland that we envision for it to be today. An inclusive Portland, a strong Portland, a resilient Portland, a Portland that stands together hand in hand. We stand here with the Portland Assembly of Music Portland, Save Portland Buildings, Portland Tenants United, and many more. We will not allow the same tactics of our state. We will no longer allow the same principles that have driven us out again. We will no longer allow these things to remove us from our community. We want action. We demand action. We want it now. God bless you.
My name is M.K. Hansen. I'm a data activist, a forward and reverse systems architect and engineer, and a lifelong renter. I'm kind of an indoor kid. Understanding the complexities of how things work and how they're constructed, all the moving parts and interdependencies, is ultimately also a search for the truth. It's how we get to the heart of issues, confront the root of problems, and build solutions designed not only to make things better, stronger, or faster, but also to do no harm in the process. Bureaucracy is highly fragmented, incredibly inefficient at solving systemic problems, and reluctant to even admit that there is a problem, especially if it's a big one. Add politics and deep-pocketed corporate lobbyists to that, and you get intentional obfuscation of the truth that drives and influences policy through false narratives instead. The architects and engineers of disaster capitalism have their fingerprints all over our society, and they have shocked, lied, flattered, harmed, and hindered every step of the way in order to extract wealth through constructs which create and perpetuate poverty, pain, and suffering of the many for the profits of the few. So I'm here today to help us unpack a few things together. It'll be a fun and infuriating thing that we do together. For today, we're going to focus on one of the spokes in this wheel, this stealth URM title encumbrance. Even that's a mouthful. And it's a complex issue, but by showing up here today, I know you want to do this together. So thank you. This is part and parcel of the broader conversations about policies of displacement, demolition, and dispossession that many of you here today are already too familiar with. I am so inspired by the work that so many of you are doing. I see you, I respect you, and we're here with you too. So let's start unpacking. Some of you have copies in hand of the press release for this event. Hang on to this. It'll help you discern who is telling you what they want you to believe by omitting critical information from those who believe it's their ethical responsibility to give you all the information so that you can decide for yourself. The narrative you're probably familiar with is that the city passed an ordinance in October requiring owners of unreinforced masonry buildings to put up a sign, a notification, that lets tenants and visitors know that the building may not perform well in a major seismic event. Seems harmless enough. It's just a sign, like the ones that employers and public establishments are required to put up in conspicuous places, or like lead paint disclosures. 3 weeks ago, the PDX started sending out a variety of FAQs and links to the owners of buildings who were on the city's URM list. A list, by the way, that comes with a disclaimer that says it's unverified. A list that was assembled by drive-by. Embedded in these packets of information was a contract that owners needed to sign and file with the county tax assessor's office that explicitly authorizes the city to attach an encumbrance, a lien, to the title. So this sign is no longer a notification, it's a condemnation. It's an anvil dropped onto the mortgages of every building on the list in one fell swoop. buildings that are already otherwise in compliance with current building codes. And the conjured weight of that stealth maneuver is the full cost of the most prohibitively expensive and invasive level of retrofits, way beyond what the current code requires, and astronomically above and beyond the policy recommendations still being considered. Mayor Wheeler made a promise just a few months ago to work with community members to phase in financially viable incremental retrofits, which is especially critical for people like the ones I stand here with today, who only have one small building or church and without large diversified investment portfolios to leverage. This title encumbrance breaks that promise, but it risks the livelihoods, missions, and well-being of all the nonprofits, low-income renters, small businesses, artists and musicians, and congregations who live, work, and connect in these places. We don't need to look any farther than what's right in front of us for daily reminders that the speculative real estate investment gold rush is predicated on creating, exacerbating, and perpetuating a crisis of affordability. We have the second highest rate of unsheltered individuals in the nation, and thousands of market rate apartments sitting vacant. The world's largest private equity corporation and Wall Street's biggest landlord, the creator of rent-backed mortgage securities, Blackstone, and their Washington state partner in gentrification, Holland Partner Group, together bought and sold over $2.5 billion in multifamily real estate in the Portland area just in the last 2 years. There are over 7,000 residential units alone in URM buildings, and together with all of these commercial buildings, they are the most supremely valuable locations. There is gold in the dirt underneath these cornerstones of our community, and the only way that speculative developers can extract it before this overinflated bubble bursts in a few years is to pull the alarm right now and offer no choice but all or nothing, one or the other. The city's title lien will damage and distress mortgages instantly and has already caused disinvestment by conventional lenders. It will provide opportunistic advantage to private equity and allow them to coerce small business owners, small building owners, into selling their prime pieces of real estate for artificially low cash prices because they have no leverage and their entire investment has been wiped out by the encumbrance. These are the constructs of hostile takeovers that Wall Street is known for, and we live in a city that lets developers demolish sound, habitable housing without any mandates of affordability. The city's planning to upzone 96% of residential neighborhoods through the residential infill project and every major commercial corridor through the Better Housing by Design proposals, increasing the speculative value even more in all these coveted locations and for certain trophy buildings, and incentivizing the wholesale man-made destruction of the fabric of our communities. We're here today to stand with the NAACP in solidarity and to build a broader coalition of support in demanding that the city leaders stop. Bring those of us who are most significantly and adversely impacted by these policies to the table instead of stacking committees with those who stand to benefit the most financially at our expense. Come together. Thank you. Together in good faith to promote policies that reinforce the fabric of our communities instead of tearing them apart. We can have it both ways. Solutions built from the bottom up with full transparency and community engagement is how we balance retrofitting our built environment to be safer and more resilient for the future while protecting our citizens in the present from the man-made catastrophe of displacement, the economic violence of corporate gentrification, and the constructs of poverty and inequality. Thank you for listening. Yeah.